They had planned it for months, every detail mapped out from the time they would land to the clubs. They would visit to the exact outfits for each night in Vegas. The trip was supposed to be the perfect celebration of finishing college, of leaving behind boring classes, of finally being free and alive and together, just like they had always dreamed. 4 girls, 1 weekend. No rules, but none of them could have imagined that one of them would never come back, that one of them would simply vanish into the neon-soaked nightmare of Las Vegas. Emma, Sarah, Chloe, and Megan arrived late on a Thursday night, the air hot, the strip loud, lights everywhere, people shouting, laughing, everything alive and pulsing. They were tired, but buzzing with energy. As they checked into their hotel, a cheaper spot off the main strip, but still close enough to feel like they were in the middle of everything. It was old, with faded wallpaper and elevators that groaned every time they moved, but the price was right. And the room was big enough for all 4 of them. They laughed as they unpacked, Emma tossing her bag onto the bed closest to the window, Sarah smiling quietly like she always did, Chloe already planning which bar they would hit first, and Megan pulling out her glitter makeup kit and declaring this weekend was going to be legendary. But something felt off from the very beginning, something too quiet behind the noise of the city, the hallway outside. Their room always felt colder than it should have. Then the elevator lights flickered whenever they stepped in, and the red carpet lining the 7th floor was slightly damp, as if it had just been cleaned, even though it always looked exactly the same. And the bellhop who helped them with their bags had looked at Sarah too long, far too long, like he recognized her, or like he was trying to remember something. But when Emma asked if she was okay, Sarah just shrugged and said he was probably high hat night. They drank too much, danced too long, and stumbled back to the hotel after 3 in the morning, laughing until their throats hurt, their shoes in their hands. Sarah was the last to enter the room, her eyes distant, her hands shaking slightly, and when Emma asked her what was wrong, she hesitated before saying she thought someone had followed them from the club. Not a guy, not someone she could really describe. Just a feeling like she was being watched, like something had brushed against her shoulder when no one was near, like she heard someone whisper her name, and when they looked, no one was there. Others brushed it off, blaming alcohol and exhaustion and the madness of Vegas. But Emma noticed Sarah barely slept that night, tossing, turning, muttering under her breath words that made no sense, sometimes sounding like her own name, sometimes like a song. And just before Emma drifted off, she thought she saw Sarah sitting at the edge of the bed, staring at the mirror with a strange smile that did not belong to her. Next morning, Sarah was gone. At first, they thought she had gone out for coffee or a walk. Emma checked the bathroom, the lobby, the pool, nothing. Her phone was still on the nightstand, her purse untouched, her shoes exactly where she had left them. And when they asked the front desk if they had seen her, the woman behind the counter blinked slowly and said they only had 3 guests checked in under the reservation. There was no Sarah on the system and no record of her room key being used at any time. That night, Emma argued, demanded they check again, showed them photos of Sarah standing in that very room. But the woman just shook her head and said, maybe your friend never arrived. Chloe and Megan started panicking, talking over each other, wondering if they should call the police or her family. But Emma just stood there frozen, because on her phone there was a new voicemail. The timestamp said it was recorded 5 hours in the future. It was from Sarah. Hema played the message on speaker, her hands shaking, and at first there was only static and then breathing, and then Sarah's voice, soft and broken, saying, Emma, Emma, I am still here. And then silence. Ethy sat in stunned silence for minutes, not sure what to do, not sure what it meant. Chloe started crying. Megan said it had to be a prank, but Emma knew Sarah's voice. She knew how it sounded when she was scared, and she remembered the way she had looked last night, like she already knew something was coming. Determined, Emma started searching the hotel herself, room by room, corner by corner, ignoring the looks from guests and staff. She returned to the 7th floor. Alone, retraced every step, opened every closet, every maintenance door, until she found something she had not seen before. At the far end of the hallway, just past a fire extinguisher, was a narrow passageway, half hidden by a potted plant, a hallway that slanted slightly to the left and led to a single red door. Door had no number, no sign, no handle, just a single keyhole. And a thin line of light glowing from beneath. Emma knocked and no one answered, but she heard music, faint, slow, a song she could not recognize, and then she heard it again, her name whispered from behind the door, as if someone was standing right there, inches away, whispering through the wood. Emma. She backed away, heart pounding, ran to find the others, but when she returned with Chloe and Megan, the hallway was gone. Nothing but a wall now, no potted plant, no red door, and no one believed her. That night, she stayed up watching the mirror across the room, unable to sleep, waiting for something, anything, and just past 3:30. She saw it, Sarah's reflection standing behind her, smiling eyes, black mouth open, but no sound, and when she turned around, no one was there. Next morning, Emma found a bracelet on the windowsill. It was Sarah's, the one she always wore, the one she had lost a week before the trip, and when she picked it up, a drop of blood fell from her nose and hit the carpet, and the mirror cracked without being touched. Room with the red door. Emma could not sleep, not after what she had seen, not after that voicemail, not after that cracked mirror. The others tried to pretend nothing was wrong. They played music, watched TV, ordered room service, and tried to force laughter, but something was broken, something in the air, something in the silence between words that once held friendship. Now only fear remained, and Emma could not look into mirrors anymore because she was afraid of what would look back at her. She went back to the hallway, the one that vanished, the one with the red door, but it was gone. Now just a wall, plain and silent. She knocked on it anyway, knocked and whispered Sarah's name, hoping the door would return, hoping the hallway would open, hoping anything would answer her. But the wall stayed cold and empty, like it had never held a secret at all. Chloe and Megan started fighting. One blamed the other, one blamed Emma. One wanted to go home, one wanted to call Sarah's brother, one said they should just forget it all and try to enjoy the rest of the trip. Emma ignored them. She knew Sarah had not just walked away, she knew something had taken her, and it had started with that mirror and that voicemail, and that strange whispering voice that spoke her name in the dark. That night, Emma stayed awake again, watching the mirror from her bed, her heart beating fast every time the air grew still, every time the shadows moved just a little too slow. And at exactly 3:33, she saw it again, the reflection of the red door behind her, glowing faintly, and the mirror did not show her face. It showed Sarah sitting on the floor on the other side of the glass, her eyes wide, her mouth moving like she was screaming, but no sound coming out. And then a hand reached from the mirror and touched the back of Emma's neck, and she screamed again. And Chloe ran in asking what happened, but Emma could not speak. She just pointed to the mirror, but now it was normal. Now it was just a mirror, and her reflection looked like it always had, and no one believed her. She tried to explain, tried to tell them what she had seen, what she had felt, but they only looked at her like she was losing her mind, and maybe she was, but something inside her would not let go. Something inside her knew she had to go back to the hallway. She had to find the red door again before it was too late, before she forgot Sarah's voice. Completely. Emma waited until the others fell asleep, then slipped out of the room with only her phone and a flashlight in her pocket. The hallway was quiet, too quiet, the kind of quiet that presses against your ears like it's trying to get inside your head. And the lights above flickered as she walked past them one by one until she reached the end, and there it was again. The hallway was back, narrow, crooked, tilted to the left like before, and at the very end was the red door, glowing faintly as if it were alive. Emma stepped forward, each footfall heavier than the last, the air growing colder with every step until she stood before the door. And this time, there was a handle, a brass one, cold and smooth, and when she touched it, a voice from behind the door whispered, "You should not be here." She turned around, but the hallway behind her was gone. Only darkness stretched back, and the floor beneath her feet felt soft like wet carpet soaked in something thick and warm. And when she turned back, the door was open, and beyond it was not a room. It was a hallway lined with mirrors, all fogged, all pulsing like hearts, each one showing a different imaging. One mirror, she saw her own room, but Sarah was sitting on her bed, brushing her hair, slowly staring at nothing. In another, she saw the hotel lobby completely empty. except for a figure standing behind the front desk wearing her clothes in the third. She saw herself standing in this exact hallway, looking back through the mirror holding a phone she did not own, and when she looked closer, the phone showed a live video of herself staring into the mirror. She stepped forward, and all the mirrors shattered at once, the sound like a scream that never ended, and the hallway blinked out, and she was in a room now, a circular room with no windows and no doors, only walls covered in photos, old black and white photos of people staring into mirrors, their faces blurred, their eyes scratched out, and at the center of the room was a single red chair facing a single mirror, and on the mirror, written in something dark and sticky, were the words, "Bring her back." Emma stepped toward the mirror, and in it she saw herself again. But behind her stood a girl, her skin pale, her dress torn, her eyes full of pain, and the girl said, "You can trade places, you can open the way." And Emma asked, "How?" And the girl said, "Say her name 3 times while facing the mirror and leave something of hers behind." Emma reached into her pocket, pulled out Sarah's bracelet, her hands shaking, her voice cracking. She said, "Sarah, Sarah, Sarah," and the mirror turned black and the room went silent, and from the blackness came a whisper that said, "It is Danima." Woke up in her bed the next morning. Sarah was still gone, Chloe and Megan were still asleep, and the mirror was cracked again, but this time it showed no reflection, only fog, and in the fog, something moved, something that looked like Sarah, but when it turned around, it was not her face. She was never alone. Emma could no longer tell what was real and what was imagined, because every time she closed her eyes, she saw Sarah standing behind her in mirrors behind glass windows, in reflections that appeared for only a second and disappeared before she could prove it to anyone, and the more she tried to explain, the more people stopped listening. Even Chloe and Megan had started avoiding her, whispering behind closed doors, saying maybe she had a breakdown, maybe Sarah was never here, maybe the desert heat had done something to her mind. But Emma knew better. She knew Sarah had been taken, and she knew it was not just a missing person. It was something worse, something ancient and hungry, and hiding in the mirrors of that hotel. She went back through Sarah's things, what little she had left, her phone, her notebook, her purse untouched, and found nothing strange until she opened the Notes app and saw a hidden folder marked with just one word, "Watcher," and inside that folder were dozens of voice recordings and short videos, most of them just static and silence. But one of them stood out. It was from a week before their trip, a shaky video taken at night, Sarah whispering to the camera, saying, "If something happens to me," it started. Here it started with the mirrors, and then the video cut out with a sound like glass shattering and wind rushing in from a place that had no window. Emma opened the next file, a voice memo, Sarah again speaking slowly as if trying to control panic, saying, "There is someone who follows me, but no one else can see him. He speaks through the mirror, only at night, only when I am alone. He says he knew me before I was born, and he tells me I belong to him, and every time I look away, he moves closer. I do not know how much longer I can pretend. I do not hear him. I do not know how much longer I can sleep." Emma dropped the phone, her hands trembling, her breath short and cold, because she remembered nights weeks before Vegas where Sarah had seemed distracted, where she would stop in the middle of a sentence and stare into a window as if listening to something far away. And now Emma could hear it too, the whispering, the breathing, the faint tapping that came from every mirror she passed, even the ones covered in dust, even the ones in bathrooms she never entered before. That night Emma waited again for the clock to strike 3:33. She sat in front of the mirror in the hotel room, staring into her own eyes, waiting for something, anything. And when the time came, the room darkened, not by light going out, but as if something was pressing against the edges of the space, as if shadows had begun to spread from the corners. And in the mirror, she saw the reflection change. Her eyes turned black, her mouth stretched wider than it should, and behind her stood a figure with no face holding Sarah by the arm, and Sarah mouthed the words, "Help me," before vanishing. Emma screamed and fell back. Chloe and Megan ran in, but by the time they arrived, the mirror was normal again, and Emma was shaking uncontrollably. They tried to calm her, but she could not speak, she could not breathe. She could only point to the mirror and whisper, "She is still here. She is still here. She is still Harem again." Left the room, said she could not take it anymore. Chloe tried to stay, tried to be strong. But Emma could see the cracks in her too. See the fear in her eyes, and that was when Emma decided she had to go back to the red hallway alone. She waited until the hotel grew quiet, until even the elevators stopped groaning, until the air became heavy and still, and then she stepped out and walked the same path again, her bare feet silent on the carpet, and as if on cue, the hallway reappeared, twisted, slanted, colder than before, and the red door stood at the end, slightly open, like it had been expecting her. And when she stepped through it this time, there was no light, only darkness, and mirrors glowing faintly like stars in a night sky, and each one showed a version of herself standing in different rooms, some crying, some bleeding, some staring blankly, and in each one Sarah stood nearby, her face always hidden by her hair, always just out of reach. Emma called her name, and the reflections flickered. Some reached out, some screamed, some fell backward and vanished, and then all mirrors turned black except one. And in that mirror, Emma saw a hospital room and a girl who looked like Sarah, lying on a bed, her eyes closed, her mouth stitched shut, and beside her stood a woman in white, holding a mirror up to her face and whispering, "Wake up, wake up, wake up." Emma stepped closer and touched the glass and was pulled through. She fell hard into a room filled with water, the floor covered in puddles that never stopped rippling, and on the walls were dozens of photos, all showing the same hotel room, all showing Sarah alone, each time closer to the mirror, each time more faded. And in the center of the room was a chair, and on that chair sat Sarah, her eyes closed, her skin pale and thin, and when Emma touched her hand, she opened her eyes and said, "I told you not to come." Emma begged her to leave with her, said she found her, said she could break the mirror and run, but Sarah only shook her head and said, "This is not a place you leave, this is a place you replace for." Emma could ask what that meant. The room shook, the mirrors cracked, and from every wall came voices shouting Emma's name over and over, and a figure stepped forward from the largest mirror, tall, thin, no face, no sound, just the presence of something that had waited too long and wanted to feed. And Sarah looked at Emma and said, "If you want to take my place, you must choose now." And Emma looked into the mirror and saw herself fading, her skin turning pale, her eyes darkening, and she screamed, "I choose her, take me, let her go." The figure stopped, turned, and placed a hand on Emma's chest, and everything went black. Emma woke up alone in the hotel room. Chloe gone, Megan gone, the air thick and still, and the mirror on the wall showed nothing, no reflection, no light. And when she turned around, Sarah was standing by the door, smiling, her eyes clear, her body whole, and she whispered, "Thank you," before walking out. Emma tried to follow, but her body would not move, and when she looked at her hands, they were pale and fading. And when she looked into the mirror, she saw herself sitting still, eyes closed, mouth sewn shut. The girl in the glass. Emma did not know how long she had been sitting there, frozen silent, her own breath caught in her throat, her body no longer hers, her hands pale and cold and distant, her reflection gone, as if the mirror had erased her. But outside, the world moved on, or at least pretended to. The hotel buzzed with tourists and music and neon and footsteps that echoed in empty corridors. But no one looked her way, no one knocked, no one asked if she was okay. No one noticed that Sarah was back or that Emma had vanished, because now Sarah walked in Emma's place and smiled with Emma's lips and laughed with a sound that did not belong to her. And Emma, from behind the glass, from inside the dark space beyond the mirror, watched it all unfold. She watched Sarah, or the thing that wore Sarah's skin, walk into the sunlight, walk into the world and leave her behind. And she screamed, but no sound came out, no one heard her, not even the other reflections trapped in their own glass prisons, each with eyes wide and mouths sewn shut, some weeping silently, some banging with fists that made no sound. The world inside the mirror was not a world at all, it was an echo, a loop, a copy of the room that never changed, the same wallpaper peeling, the same bed unmade, the same door that never opened. And every few hours, the lights would flicker and the mirrors would show something else. A new version of herself, sometimes happy, sometimes terrified, sometimes twisted and laughing, and in every version she was alone. and in every version something waited just behind. Her just out of reach, just close enough to feel Emma walk to the edge of the mirror where the glass thinned and shimmered, and tried again to reach through her hand pressing against the surface, and for a moment, she thought it gave way, she thought. It melted under her touch, but then it pulsed like skin and pushed her back with a force that threw her across the room, and as she hit the ground, she heard laughter high and sharp and broken, the same laugh Sarah had once used when she got away. With something terrible, and Emma realized it. Was never Sarah, not completely, not after the first night, not after the first dream. Truth began to unfold piece by piece like a puzzle she had never meant to solve. The journals, the drawings, the whispers. The tapping on the mirror Sarah had known from the beginning. She had seen the signs long before Vegas, long before the trip. She had made contact, she had followed the rules, the ritual, the game, the same one written on that hotel wall in faded red ink, the same one people laughed about online until they tried it and vanished and were never heard from again. Say her name 3 times, they said, in front of a mirror after dark. In a room you do not recognize, leave something behind, something that belonged to her, and do not look away. Even if she cries, even if she begs, because if you do, she takes your place. And Sarah had done it. She had chosen Emma. She had taken the mirror, the voice, the shadow, and turned it all toward her friend. And now Emma was here, locked in glass with only the truth and her own reflection for company. But Emma was not ready to stay. Not yet, not forever, and she began to watch the patterns again. The flickers of light, the rhythm of silence, the timing of the whispers. And she noticed that every night at 3:33, the glass grew weak, like breath on cold surface, like frost melting, and for just a moment, she could see the room outside. The real room, and she began to wait, counting the hours, watching the shadows gather, gathering her will, gathering her rage. And then it came. The moment, the pulse, the breath, the crack, and she moved fast, pressed her hand against the mirror, and this time it gave way, not fully, not yet, but enough to feel the air rush in, enough to feel the cold leave her fingers. And in that second, she saw Sarah asleep in the real room, her body still, her face peaceful as if nothing haunted her, and Emma whispered her name, but Sarah did not stir, and the mirror began to close again, pulling Emma back, but she held on, her hand caught between 2 worlds, her voice louder than before, her scream full of memory and pain and betrayal. Sarah opened her eyes slowly, gradually, and saw the mirror warping, twisting, bubbling, and in it she saw Emma, reaching out, her eyes wild and her face twisted in fear. And Sarah screamed and fell from the bed, crawling back as the mirror cracked and the lights flickered and the door swung open, though no one was there, and the mirror exploded into black dust and silence, and Emma fell out. She hit the ground, gasping, coughing, her skin damp with cold, her heart racing, and her fingers bloodied from the glass. And Sarah stared from across the room, eyes wide, mouth open, unable to speak because she knew what she had done. And now Emma was free. Emma stood, slowly breathing hard, looking down at the shards of the mirror that had once been her prison, and looked back at Sarah, who now backed into the corner, shaking, whispering, "I did not mean to, I was scared, I thought it would not work. I thought it would choose someone else." And Emma stepped forward, silent, her eyes full of everything she had seen behind the glass. He did not scream, she did not cry, she only said, "You left me." And the lights above burst one by one, and the shadows returned, and the mirror on the ceiling cracked, and from its center a hand reached down, the same hand that had taken her before, and this time it moved towards Sarah, and she screamed and ran for the door, but it closed before she could reach it, and the mirror hand grabbed her ankle and dragged her across the floor, and Emma watched and did not move as Sarah was pulled screaming into the mirror, and her reflection vanished, and silence returned, and the air felt warm again, and the carpet dry, and the hotel quiet, and Emma stood alone, staring into the place where the mirror had been, and saw only herself, whole, real, breathing. She walked to the window, opened the curtain, watched the city breathe below, watched the lights blink, watched the life go on, and then turned away and packed her bag and left the hotel before the sun rose. Vanished in Vegas, but I still hear her at night. Emma Never went back to Vegas. She never spoke of the hotel, never mentioned the mirror, never told the truth to anyone. Not even her mother, not even her closest friends, not even to herself, because some truths do not survive sunlight. Some memories grow. Teeth in the dark, and even when you bury them deep, they find ways to dig themselves back out again. She moved cities, changed her number, deleted every photo that had Sarah in it, burned the dress she wore that night, and told herself again and again that it was over, that she had escaped, that the mirror had been broken, and the curse had ended. But every night just after 3:30, she would wake up without knowing why, her throat dry, her skin cold, her heart beating like something unseen had whispered her name. And some nights when the lights were off and the windows open and the house too quiet, she would hear footsteps in the hallway, footsteps that stopped just outside her bedroom door. And once, when she was brave enough to check, there were wet footprints on the floor leading away from the bathroom mirrors. Tried therapy, meditation, new cities, new friends, new names, but nothing silenced the memory. Nothing erased the sound of Sarah screaming as she was pulled back into the glass. Nothing stopped the feeling that maybe it was not over. Maybe it had never really ended. Maybe something had come back with her, something wearing her shape, something watching from the other side of the mirror. And one day a package arrived. No return address, no stamp, just her name written in black marker, and inside was a small hand mirror, cracked in the corner, wrapped in newspaper that smelled like mildew. And when she looked into the mirror, she did not see herself. She saw Sarah, standing in a hotel hallway, holding out her hand, mouthing the words, "It is your turn." And the mirror grew warm in her hands, and for a moment, she could not move, could not blink, could not breathe. And then the mirror shattered in her lap, and the room went cold and silent. That night, Emma stayed awake with every light on, sitting on the floor, staring at her reflection in the bedroom mirror, trying not to blink, trying not to think, trying not to remember the way the red door opened, or the way the voice sounded when it said her name. And as the clock turned to 3:33, she heard it again, soft at first like wind through a tunnel, and then clearer like someone speaking just outside the glass, and it said, "Welcome back." She turned away, but the mirror kept whispering, and her reflection did not follow her. It stood still and smiled, and when she screamed, the sound was swallowed by the glass, and her own voice echoed back, distorted and low, saying, "She is still here. She is still waiting. She is still watching, and no matter how many times you look away, she never stops looking back." Emma began seeing things again, shadows in the corners of bright rooms, reflections that showed people who were not there, whispers from the shower drain, hands on her back when she stood near glass, and once she caught her own reflection, blinking when she had not. And that was the night she stopped looking in mirrors altogether, covered every surface, taped black cloth over every screen. And even then, the whispers came, and the footsteps followed, and the dreams returned, dreams of the red hallway, of the damp carpet, of the voices calling her name again and again, of Sarah, smiling with black eyes and hands made of glass, and the deal she had made, the choice she had taken, the truth she could not unchoose. And every night, she woke with her heart screaming in her chest, and her voice gone from her throat, and the feeling that something had crawled back inside her room before Sunrizioni night. Months later, she was walking past a pawn shop when she saw it again, the exact mirror from the hotel sitting in the window, cracked in the corner. Same frame, same shimmer, and the second she looked into it, she saw the red hallway again, saw the door half open, saw herself standing inside smiling, and behind her the shape, the one with no face, the one that whispered and called, and Tooks ran without thinking, and did not stop until she was home. But the damage was done. Something had reconnected. Something had reopened, and that night the mirror in her bedroom cracked down the center without being touched, and her reflection stepped out of sync half a second too slow. And that was when she knew it had come back for her, that it had always meant to, that the escape was just a delay, not an end, and that every choice has a price. The next day, she packed everything she owned into boxes, gave away her furniture, closed her accounts, and disappeared. No one knew where she went, no one heard from her again. Her apartment stayed empty until the landlord came to clear it out and found every mirror in the house shattered, and a single line written in red on the bathroom wall, saying she vanished in Vegas, but I still hear her at night. And now I live in this house and I do not know who Emma was. But I hear the footsteps too, and I see the reflections move. And last night, I woke up at 3:33 and someone whispered my name from the mirror, and it sounded like me. The end.